Welcome to the Mentors and Moguls podcast. I'm your host, Heather Stone. I bring you mentors and moguls from all around the world, different walks of life, from creatives to CEOs to business leaders to top athletes and all kinds of other people in between. In today's episode, we're going to have an entertaining and lively discussion with three very accomplished gentlemen in the world of sports. TJ Lang was drafted to the National Football League by the Green Bay Packers in the fourth round in 2009. TJ was a member of the Packers Super Bowl 45 team and finished his playing career with the Detroit Lions. He's a two-time Pro Bowler, and he's now retired from the NFL. He's still active in the Detroit Lions organization through various media roles. Charlie Batch is a former NFL quarterback turned tech entrepreneur, media personality, and color analyst, community advocate, and professional speaker. His NFL career spanned over 15 years with 2 Super Bowl victories, and he's a respected strategist in the NFL, providing game day commentary for the Steelers broadcast and several national outlets. Our third and final panelist is former NFL player for the Houston Oilers and the Dallas Cowboys, Brett Petersmark. He is now currently the president of Petersmark Financial Network, Ltd. Hello, and welcome to the Mentors and Moguls podcast. I'm your host, Heather Stone, and we are going to have a lively conversation today with some NFL superstars. I'm sure you're going to recognize them. We've got the infamous Mr. Charlie Batch of the Pittsburgh Steelers with multiple Super Bowl rings. We've got TJ Lang with multiple Super Bowl rings as well from the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions. And we've got from the Houston Oilers and Dallas Cowboys turned financial consultant, Brett Petersmark. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for joining today. So today the topic is NIL. So if you've been hiding under a rock and you don't know what NIL is, let me just say this at the top of the show. So NIL is basically in July of 2021, NCAA said that student athletes have the rights to monetize and profit from their personal brand, which consists of their name, image, and likeness. So that means college athletes can sign sponsorship deals with corporate brands, charge money for autographs, and even create their own brand or an e-com site. What do you all think of this new ruling? Was it a surprise? Did you see it coming? Let's start there.
Well, I loved it. To be honest with you, it was one of those things to where it was well overdue. Everybody knew this was something that the student athletes were taking advantage of. And quite frankly, institutions didn't want to treat them as employees. And that was something that, was that kind of gray area for a very long time. So whenever the announcement was made, I was all in favor for it.
How about you, TJ?
Yeah, I don't think there was any surprise about it. Players have been fighting for a long time now to try to, like Charlie said, kind of make themselves employees and unionize and try to capitalize off of how much money schools make off of them. And I know there's the argument, well, you get the free education, that should be payment enough. But when you talk about college sports, I mean, in the multi-billions and billions of dollars that go into it, I think it's only fair that the players make what they're worth and take advantage of the opportunities that they have to work with other corporations or other businesses to, try to catapult themselves into, parlaying that into, kind of setting themselves up for the future a little bit.
Brett, what do you think? You're a finance guy. So what do you think about all of these young players just coming out of high school with some serious dollars in their pocket? What do you think about money management and handling that?
There's a couple of questions in there. To go back to your original question, I was excited too. I'm still excited about the NIL for the guys. I'm probably the oldest of the three of us here, and I can tell you when I was in college, we couldn't even get a part-time job. They wouldn't allow you to do that because it put your scholarship in jeopardy, even to just get things for food, right? In times, because we're young, we never did a good job of managing anything, right? So when the checks from the scholarships you were eating ramen noodles and tuna, it was just a different time back then. The only thing that I wish that would have been a better job with the NCAA is if they would have had more rules, right? That made it easier for people to understand, because right now, their main principle is at a fair value. And we can get into that later. It's very vague. And I think that's going to lead to more problems later, but I'm excited for the opportunity for the players.
Would you be okay if an 18-year-old has $30,000 a year or more, much more in their pocket during college? Would you be nervous as a parent or a coach?
100%. As a matter of fact, if I even asked any of the guys, because I know they all have kids, if you said your child is, I know mine wasn't, to say, and I know that everyone's not going to get the big bucks, right? And the majority of them probably aren't. But bigger money, bigger problems.
When you look at that, I mean, football and basketball are the only ones penalized that you have to actually go to school before you become a professional. So that's something that if you look and say, okay, golf, soccer, baseball, you can actually sign coming directly out of high school. So when you look at the family dynamics that's happening, everybody's situation is different. And some people will look and choose a school based off NIL. Some people may not, because they do have money that was set aside for them at a younger age that they can now go to a university of their choice. So every situation is different.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. Definitely agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think maybe the rules need to be changed a little bit too, where Heather, like you said, 18, 19-year-old kids making all this money. I mean, and it's just not, tens of thousands. I mean, there's rumors about millions of dollars. But the problem is right now, the rules are so vague. Nobody knows. It's kind of like the wild, wild west out there in college football and college basketball. Just anything's happening and people don't know how to control it, it seems like. But if there was a rule somewhere in place where it says, we're putting this money into, an account for you, whatever it is. And by the time you graduate, it's going to be there, because that might be better, because there's still so many college athletes that might be, superstars in college, whether it's basketball or football, that never make it, to the NFL or the NBA. So to be able to come out of college with some sort of bankroll to get you started on your second career, maybe it'd be wiser, for the NCAA to regulate, okay, you can make this money, but you can't really touch it until either you're 21 or by the time you graduate or leave school.
Right. Well, I can certainly understand that it would be a great idea for someone who's trying to scrape by just to pay their rent and have food on the table while they're a college athlete, that it would be great to have money coming in, just having that breather right there, since you are making so much money for the university. Let me talk a little bit about girls versus boys. Do you see any difference right now in the offers that are going out and some of the deals that are being made? Is the pay equal, or is it just all over the board?
No, I think it's better for the girls, because but the money's not equal yet, and it still has the disparity. But I think it's good opportunities. I think even some of the non-revenue sports, the NIL really is going to make a difference, because if you have some alumni who want to help and want to say, hey, this meant a lot to me, it's a way that they might be able to attract some better athletes to come to their alma mater, or maybe just takes one, right, with the smaller sports that now has made an impact on that program. That's just my thought.
Charlie, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think obviously you see the numbers are different as it relates to, depending on the sport, quite frankly. But then I see a lot of it. I see the women that are able to kind of be able to capitalize on it a lot more, because they're a lot more influenced or being followed a lot more on social media. The young lady from UConn, she is killing it, not only on the basketball court, but off the field as well. You do hear stories about women who are transferring, who are, coming in and putting big money into their pocket. So I'm all for it. It doesn't matter male or female, but I think ultimately, as this kind of evolves, I think the women will benefit a lot more than men.
I think I heard that there is a female athlete that has 5.6 million followers. She is a gymnast and she is killing it. So that was wonderful to see, but it was a big surprise when I saw the number.
And this is something that when you look at what's happening right now, everybody talks about, they want to get their followers up, but yet how do you capitalize off of that? How do you monetize that? And you hear it in other industries as it relates to influencers who are making millions of dollars. But now when you incorporate that into student athletes, now they're figuring out how to do that. And it just, one thing that kind of bothers me is the fact that when they are influencers, then you have universities saying, well, you can't use our logo. But you've used the logo for them on the back of their jersey for so long. And now when it comes time for the athlete to capitalize off of it, you're now restricting him off of it. So I just think, like TJ mentioned, there's so many rules, there's so many different things that are happening and a lot of gray area on this subject that everybody's just still trying to figure this out. And as you've seen just recently, I think now you have legislators or maybe top university officials that are now trying to go to DC to lobby to try to figure out how they can wrap their arms around it. That's a little too late now. The cat is out the bag, and people are going to continue to monetize in the way that they are now.
Yeah. That's right. Well, I could see someone winning, a state championship or a bowl game. Does that mean that they can't be on the field and text out a picture, tweet a picture, put it on their social media if the logos are in the background, the team jerseys are there? Does that mean they are prohibited from doing that?
If you get paid, I think it is, right? I think obviously you can post social media pictures, whatever you're in, but I don't think, like Charlie said, you can't, if you get a sponsorship from this corporation, you can't show up wearing, let's just say Alabama, wearing your Alabama jersey or wearing a shirt that says Alabama. It's basically, you're just representing yourself and not the school. So like Charlie said, it's kind of, it's difficult because, you're not allowed to use the one image or logo that everybody pretty much associates with you and your popularity and your fame. So schools, you can obviously kind of tell that they're still trying to fight their way through it, because I think a lot of them, it still makes them uncomfortable a little bit. But here in the early stages, I think of NIL even being maybe a year in now, there's just there's not as much structure, I don't think, as they were anticipating for how fast all this was going to really take off.
Well, talking about letting the cat out of the bag before the rules are really black and white and they've thought everything through, what's it like to be a college recruiter right now? What does that turn everybody on their head? Does it make it difficult? Are coaches liking this, or are they just shaking their heads?
I think it's got to be really tough, Heather. Just not only with the NIL, trying to find motivations of these kids, right? Do they want to come here to try to win football games, or do they just want to come here to try to make money? But also, you combine that with the transfer rule. I mean, if you're a small school and you try to go recruit, all these big name players, there's no guarantee that they're going to stay for 4 or 5 years anymore. Every kid is now allowed that one-time transfer where he can go freely and go play the next year at a different school. So I think being a recruiter is incredibly difficult because you just don't know that you have long-term security by having this kid, to develop this kid to come in and say 3-4 years from now, he's going to be a star player. You just don't know if they're going to hang around. So I'd imagine those guys are really having to adjust their game plan when they step into these, 17, 18-year-old kids' homes and try to get them into their school.
But on the flip side to that, TJ, here's the one thing that coaches would come into living rooms of homes and say, hey, I'm going to be here 4 years. You have a 4-year scholarship. But once you get to that university, the athlete quickly realizes you're a year-to-year player. And that coach can pull your scholarship out right away. So when you now put those strengths back into the athlete's hand, the recruiters don't like that anymore. And the one thing that I didn't like, especially when you would have coaches that would recruit players, and sell them on the fact that, hey, you're going to come to this university, I'm going to be here. The moment that player signs that scholarship, the coach goes and leaves somewhere else. And the player was restricted and had to be there 4 years. Or if they decided that they needed to transfer, then they were penalized 1 year of eligibility to try to move on to another university. So the rules weren't fair from the beginning. And now the power has shifted to the athlete's hands. Now coaches all of a sudden have an issue with this.
Yeah. And like the three of us here, I think we will always be on the team player, so to speak. It's nice. We're a little jealous that we didn't have this power back when we were playing. But like Charlie said, on the flip side, it is nice knowing that players, you have a decision to make, and, you always have more resources than ever before to make sure that, you're putting yourself in the best position possible. So I'm with you, Charlie. I think it's great that the players have this power. Just speaking on the coach's side of it, I think it probably makes them uncomfortable because they don't have all the power anymore like they did forever. And I think that makes a lot of them a little bit nervous.
So, Brett, what do you think about coaches and the players in the locker room? In some cases, you might have a player that's making more money because of NIL than the coach. And then how does that transfer to the dynamics in the locker room, on and off the field with some kid who's made a ton of money in college and walking on, and then other guys that just didn't get that opportunity?
Mm-hmm. Heather, it's kind of interesting because one of the byproducts that we're really talking about is because we can't really say it's pay to play, right? Because that's not what NIL is about. kinda, right? But legally it's not. But what we're trying to do is tell these athletes that they have to be entrepreneurial and they need to find a way to have their brand that would make them attractive to exactly what Charlie and TJ were talking about, of why alumni or sponsors would say, hey, I want to use Charlie Batch to represent my logo or my business, or TJ to come be a spokesperson and make that money. And what I've been finding out so far is when you're talking to some, especially the young athletes that are unproven, great athletes, and people are telling them how great they are, right? That they have no idea really what it's going to take in order to be business savvy, right? One of the things that I'm hoping that we're going to do is have some financial literacy to help them. Like one guy I was talking to, I said, hey, if you do your NIL and stuff like that, he was going to get paid just a little something. It was pretty cool. I said, how you doing dealing with the taxes? What do you mean? That was the answer. And I'll guarantee you, if you said that to everyone, especially in recruiting, I mean, I know it's not the time to get into it, but you'd want to educate at least the parents of the child that's, I call them a child because they are, right? That they at least here's some other things that there's some work that comes behind other than you being the great athlete. I don't know. So I think the recruiting, like you guys are saying, it's a good and a bad. But I think as it goes further down the road, I think we're going to find ways to soften that, find out how those relationships are going to be. If the coach is, I don't think there'll be a deal. Maybe when you get to a senior or someone like that, there could be some ego issues versus money, but not initially.
And when I've had that conversation with coaches and I said, well, what are your goals and aspirations? Some of the coaches say, I want to make it to the professional ranks. So this is almost like a stepping stone from the college to the pros. And I said, well, if you're worried about that pay scale, when you get to the National Football League, your quarterback's going to make more than you anyway. So you have to now understand and build relationships that way. And when you understand kind of this pay scale, you understand we're not all equal. We can talk about professional ranks, but when you now enter into the workforce, everybody's value is different. You're worth what they're going to pay you. So you have to now be able to adapt and deal with that. And I think right now, these are just conversations that have to continue to be had a lot earlier than what they were in the past.
That's a really good point. So I was looking into a lot of the current sponsorships, I'll call them, companies. Now, it's everything from crypto to Gatorade to, athletic wear and beyond, right? That I'll call them kids. They're not kids, young athletes, that they're signing to and representing. They can't be represented by alcohol, beverage companies, or gambling. Is there anything else any other guidelines that you know of?
That's crazy to me because universities have beer advertisers, right? They're like, okay, but now you're restricting athletes to be able to do it. It just kind of baffles me how they put the restrictions together.
You think that'll change going forward, TJ? You think everyone's going to go rethink this after a year or two and say, okay, let's rewrite the laws a little bit and tighten up the guidelines or loosen it up a little bit?
You would think so. I mean, just with the way that this has escalated so fast from, people talking about maybe a couple $100, couple $1,000 to now, millions of dollars. I don't think that NCAA really has a choice but to try to get involved, to try to regulate it at some level. But like Charlie said, I do think it's pretty funny when, they always try to have this moral ground, right? Where it's no gambling, no casinos, no liquor, no beverages, but they're pretty much every university has some sort of sponsorship with every one of those, especially with the legal gambling that's going on now too. I understand it though. But yeah, I think, look, this thing it's only going to keep getting bigger. And the bigger it gets, the more likely something is going to happen where it just boils over, into something ridiculous, $20 million, $30 million, just something crazy. So I think that it's going to be interesting. I don't know what's going to happen, but it just seems like right now with the wild, wild west mentality, they don't have their only other choice is to try to regulate it somehow. I just don't know how it's going to look.
Well, with these new guidelines, there's a whole new industry. You've got a different level of agents that are going after the younger and younger, right? Kids in high school trying to represent all of these different brands. And you've got, of course, there's got to be a legal team. And Brett, as you mentioned, there's got to be a financial team advising these kids, because I can tell you right now, if I'm 18 and I'm making $500,000, I'm not thinking about putting money away to pay my taxes the following year. That's not even in my mind. So what do you think that looks like? Have you seen, I've met a couple people that are now in the game and it's kind of wide open for people to enter into that. What do you think about the industry and all the people that are coming in? What do you see out there?
Well, it's going to be quite interesting because I know some of them kind of promise the world. And again, everyone's got their own brand. So how successful that's going to be. And they're trying to help them cultivate their brand on social media and try and do other things to maybe, popularity in order to be paid for their name, image, and likeness, right? Not pay to play.
Right.
But it's not quite there yet. Like we've just been talking about, the rules are so vague because the whole main thing is fair market value. I'll give you an example. I know Texas gave their linemen, 16 of them, $50,000 a piece. So to me, though, those guys are trying to, if you're a business person, you're trying to help your program, but yet still have an advantage for you. What happens? Because their season was 5-7. Am I going to continue to give them $50,000 and not? So now, if we don't do it the next year, does that lead to now maybe guys might leave because they're not going to get an NIL deal? Because it's like Charlie said, it's a year by year basis. Or actually, even just to be straight, some NIL deals can be, I give you a T-shirt, right, to come to a charity with me. So they all don't have to be big dollars, but you're right. It's going to be interesting to see, like we're all saying, man, a year from now, it might be completely different, right? Because NCAA is going to say, seeing the big money, there's more commas in them, that they're going to try and get their hands back in it, I'm sure, as NCAA tries to do. But it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds.
It's amazing to me as I look back and I see everything that you just mentioned, but yet people get upset at the athletes, but fail to realize, wait a minute, the Big Ten is getting ready to sign $1 billion television contract. Guess who's the ones who are performing? The players. So why wouldn't the players be able to capitalize on a particular deal that way?
Mm-hmm.
What does this do? What does this do to the smaller schools? Because this applies, correct me if I'm wrong, to D1, D2, and D3 schools. I know not every single state has this yet, but I understand that even if your state, if I'm a student athlete, even if my state hasn't signed, I think Iowa hasn't, correct me if I'm wrong, Iowa hasn't put this NIL into place, but a player that's in Iowa can go somewhere else. The state doesn't have to represent it for him to entertain or her to entertain an offer somewhere else. So what does this do to the smaller schools that couldn't get the best players? Is it now a free for all saying, wow, the dynamics might change. Maybe the top teams might not have the best pick for college. What do you say to that?
Go ahead, TJ.
I think just real quick, I think it gives them a tool to try to even out the playing field a little bit, right? I think if you're a small school with, a good group of maybe donors or alumni behind you and say, hey, we couldn't get this kid, 4 years ago because he had all these big offers. Now we have a chance to maybe put together a little pool for him and really go after him. So I think, the big money at the beginning right now it seems like it's all with the big schools, but it definitely gives the smaller schools a different, sort of advantage to try to create a way to close that gap when it comes to recruiting.
How about you, Charlie?
I think when you look at what's happening there, to TJ's point, it gives an opportunity for some of the coaches who may not have targeted a particular player because they didn't think they had a chance. Now, all of a sudden, if you're that coach who may potentially have 1 or 2 years, you may take a shot at that player if you have a pool of money to say, hey, we may have an opportunity. The people who I feel bad for is not the first people in the transfer portal. It's the high school students, those seniors who are actually getting ready to come out. Because if I have 1 year, why would I want to wait and develop a high school player unsure if this guy is going to be able to meet the requirements in the classroom? I may pick one out of the transfer portal because I know he understands, he has the experience, he went to class, his grades are good, and he can play immediately. So those are the ones that, so the high school seniors would be the ones that will eventually be pushed out because of some of the circumstances that are happening right now.
So let's talk about that portal. There's a portal there with everyone. Is it like you just put your name in there if you're a player and for recruiters to take a look at you and it's kind of a open bidding session, or how does that work?
It's basically you're re-entering, you're opening your recruitment again. You're saying, okay, I was here for a year, maybe I was here for 2 years, and what other circumstance it might be. Maybe I'm not going to play here for the next couple of years, or maybe a bunch of coaches just left and, I want to go try something different. It's just a way everybody gets one transfer now, where in the past you could transfer, but you had to sit out. I think it was a year, which affected a lot of people. It kind of prevented them from transferring because you got to sit out a year. That's 1 year is a big difference from going from a junior year to a senior year. So now with the one free transfer that they get, it's basically just, I'm going to enter my name in the portal. Maybe it's a kid at a small school that feels like he can play at a bigger school and just wants more exposure. Or, I think there's also a lot of kids that just, they come in the freshman year, sophomore year, and you know what? They realize, hey, I've got a couple dudes in front of me on the depth chart and I'm not going to be playing a lot. Maybe I just want to go somewhere and play, and they transfer and they end up going to a smaller school. But I think that's pretty much how the portal works, is that you put your name in there. I think every college coach has access to, the portal. I don't know exactly what the portal looks like. It's probably just a database of names and position in schools, but and then it's open recruitment. I think if other coaches say, hey, we played against this team last year. Hey, we watched this film. We like this kid. He's in the transfer portal. Let's go try to recruit him and bring him in here. So I think that's kind of the gist of how the portal is working now.
It seems like an incredible shift in power, as you said. So you've got the student athletes. If I'm a coach, I would be watching the portal on a regular basis, thinking who else is going to enter their name into a portal after they've been playing here a year, right? So you've got another thing to watch out for. Are they thinking about leaving? Do I have to go out and try and, can they go out and recruit money, or does the coach have to be quiet? How does that work?
I would say, also why is an athlete leaving, right? As a recruiter, you need to understand that, right? Maybe he was having problems, maybe his grades are poor, there was an incident of some sort. So that's again, like, we go back to the original question, how's it going to affect recruiting?
Right.
But it does centralize where people are going, that, the pool is easier to look at or to research of needs that you have. But I'm kind of with the effect, I think the NIL as a recruiter helps when you're especially looking for guys that are proven, like Charlie had mentioned earlier, because you want to have them understand what it takes. And even I know there's something out there I read recently, some quarterback that's getting recruited to go to a big time school, which of course isn't named yet. And who's to say, is he going to be a success or not? Right? Why? And then again, that falls back to what I was saying earlier. If he was promised, or he goes into an NIL and he doesn't do well, and they don't renew it, what's that relationship? Now, you're out. Someone else is in. But like I said, we'll find out shortly.
So for all of you, all three of you, I'm going to start with you, Charlie. I've got this question without putting your alma maters on the line. If this was in place when you were playing college ball, how do you think that would have changed your path, if at all?
Yeah, I'm not sure how it would have changed the path, but it definitely would have made life a lot easier coming out of high school, going into college. And because I knew when I got to college, I couldn't call home and ask for money because it just, quite frankly, didn't have it. So if you now shift the paradigm and you say, okay, if money was a factor, you're now making a decision off of that and you're compensated. Yeah, I would have been able to, help the family out and ease a lot of tensions from that perspective and allow me to focus on the task at hand, which was obviously graduating and then hopefully playing in the professional ranks. So it's it's kind of hard, so I think when I listen to people who complain about the NIL, it's only because it was before their time and they weren't able to capitalize off of it. And when you look at what's happening right now, there's people are kind of joking because they're saying people in college right now are making more than what the third and fourth round picks are that just got drafted in the National Football League. So it's just I would put myself in that situation and hopefully I would have been one of those guys that would have been able to profit off of it a lot sooner. How
about you, TJ?
I don't think the NIL would have changed anything for me, only because I was such a late bloomer. I only had one Division I scholarship. So it wasn't like there was a ton of schools trying to come get me. I was kind of a no-name coming out of high school. But the interesting thing is, the portal now, having the one-time transfer to be able to go somewhere else. I don't know if I would have I don't know what my decision would have been, because right around my junior year, I started to understand there was a little bit of NFL interest, and Charlie, I'm sure, was the same. We were guys that, in the MAC were dominant. If we had a chance to, go play 1 year in the Big Ten or the SEC, would we have done it? I don't know. I don't think I would have, just because of the relationships that I built and all the friends I had at Eastern Michigan. But that's a dynamic that is very, very different than it was when all three of us were in school. We didn't really have that option. It wasn't even really a choice. It never popped into your head. But if you're a kid at a smaller school and you're dominating, how do you weigh that to say, well, I want to go do it on a bigger stage, right? To try to improve maybe your NFL draft stock or try to improve, the name, image, and likeness. I don't know if it would have changed. I don't think I would have transferred. I don't think, but you never know. I mean, I wasn't in that position. Thank goodness I didn't have to make that difficult decision, but I just don't know if it would have been any different back then.
How about you, Brett?
Well, I'm laughing because I'm going to make Charlie smile. I'm one of these old farts, right? That I thought the value of the education was spectacular. And I was like TJ, I was not a superstar. I was a late bloomer myself. I had 2 opportunities in the MAC. And, it came down to my mom telling me, well, who really wants you the most? Because one wanted me, but said, if this guy goes to a different school, then we'll take you. And the other one was like, we want you. So I don't think I would have changed, but certainly I would have, I'd run it out to say, hey, man, I could make some money going over there. What is that, right? Because, it's not like I came from a poor family, but, it's expensive, right? When you don't have a lot of money. Like Charlie's saying, we called home all the time for money, just to get you by for a couple of weeks till the scholarship check came, right? To pay for the food or whatever have you. But, yeah, I don't think it would have changed me. But like I said, I'm old school.
That just made me think of something and kind of tying into the, recruitment aspect of it and the coaching aspect of it. Charlie, do you think there's been any coaches that tell these high school kids, hey, go over here, go to the MAC school. We don't have room for you yet, but go develop for a year or two. And then, we'll give you a call in a year or two, maybe enter that portal and try to use it as kind of like that minor league development system with smaller schools. I guarantee it's probably happening. I mean, it's already happened a little bit. We've seen, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but, quarterback goes from a big school to a small school, plays for a year later, goes right back to the same big school he came from. Kind of makes you question it a little bit, saying, hey, why don't you go play here for a year, and then when you're ready, come on back here and play. I think like I said, there's a lot of unknowns that are going on, but I guarantee you that's probably an aspect of it as well, as far as the recruitment.
That is the gray area right there. So that gives you that second transfer portal that you're able to transfer a second time, because if you transfer to the one school and then the new school does not have the major that you want, that's the loophole that you can now say, I'm going to go to the other university because they have theory of water as a major. My university don't have it. So that's the loophole that's happening. So it's just all funny how it all kind of coming together. So to your question, TJ, yes, that happens.
100%.
One of the things that I hear a lot from spectators, they say, I watch pro ball, but I love college ball because people are only doing it for the love of the sports. It's raw, it's real, and it's passionate, and you really need to want to be there to be on the field. What do you say to that when they say, well, this might change everything?
I think that their perception has been wrong the whole time, because college football, everybody calls it, in college basketball, college sports, they call it amateur. It's not. It's a multi-billion-dollar business that a lot of people are making a lot of money on. And now has just become the time that I think everything is starting to even out a little bit, where the players are able to get a little bit of that. So I think that people say, college athletics are so great and so golden because, the kids aren't getting paid. They're just out there working hard and do it because they love it. That's not the right perception in my mind. These kids are doing it as a job. You're getting paid in the form of free education. And now you have a chance to get paid for what you're doing on the field. Although as Brett said, you can't say pay for play, right? Technically. But I think that, it's always been college athletics has always been a huge moneymaker. And now it's starting to even out a little bit. So I think obviously anytime there's change, people are going to be uncomfortable with it at first.
And players didn't have an option. If the quickest path for you to reach your goal, which was the National Football League, you knew you had 3 years. Why transfer? So you had to wait it out to get to that point. So players just didn't have an option up until that point. So now here they have an opportunity, and it's just a matter of what that looks like. Listen, if you talk to every student athletes who enter into college, the goal is to make it to the National Football League. That's just what it is. And as you start to get closer to that reality, you start realizing, is that going to come true? Or maybe I need to start thinking about something else to do. So these are things that when you look at what's happening right now, that old school mentality versus what it is now is just one of those things that has shifted, and people now have to adapt to change.
Yeah. And like interns at any, major corporation, right? They don't get paid. They don't make money. Are they doing it for the love of being an intern? No, they're doing it to set themselves up for the future to make an impact in whatever business they're in. So a lot of similarities there.
Like I was saying, I always look at businesses that are profitable. I think the NIL has made, at a younger age, people to be more entrepreneurial, to find a way. How can I make money for myself and have that control to accomplish the goals that they want to do for themselves? And I think that's what NIL did.
Will this now push the salaries for people being pulled up into the pros after college or in the middle of college? Will this now push and raise the salary offers because the kids already have a taste of some coin?
Not at the professional ranks. You're dealing with the collective bargaining agreement that's negotiated between players and owners. So that's typically a 10-year term. So there's not much you can do from that perspective because the salaries are already implemented into the particular salary cap. So I don't see that changing, though.
There will be some players, though, that go from college and take a pay cut once they get to the pros. I'll tell you that much.
Wow, that's a dynamic I didn't expect.
Yeah, but Charlie, they'll also be able to still do their social media where they got the brands there and still be making money, right? So, I mean, it's not a big drop off, but the salary part would be definitely affected.
Absolutely. And then also it maybe delay that decision because you can say, hey, I can make more staying in college 1 year than what I would do possibly going to the NFL. So those particular situations happen. And if you just think about what happened, was it 30, 40 years ago when SMU got the death penalty for things that we are talking about right now for players getting paid under, you had players who actually went on record saying they took a pay cut when they left SMU to go to the professional ranks.
Wow. Interesting. All right. Last thoughts. Where do you think we're going to be in a year from now? Start with you, TJ.
Probably in the same position. I think it's only this NIL stuff is only going to keep growing until something just boils over. I know just recent rumors in the past, 4 to 6 weeks about, kids getting, multi-million-dollar deals to go sign with teams. I think in a year from now, if this isn't, if the NCAA doesn't get in there a little bit quicker, which we know they want to do to try to, add in some additional rules and laws, I think we're going to start seeing, numbers that nobody ever thought we would see. 10 million, 15 million, 20 million. It's just going to continue to grow.
Wow. Brett?
I think we're actually going to probably see some sanctions, right? Because I think NCAA is going to try and, like we said, they're going to try and, put some laws on something that's already out of the bag. But there's going to be some people that, when you say, is that fair value for that person, the player who made $9 million for one activity? No, I guess it's for the NCAA to try and get more control. That's what I think we'll see.
And Charlie?
And I ultimately think this gets worse before it gets better. And worse, where it gets better for the player, worse for the NCAA. So this is a whirlwind. They, right now they're trying to reel everything in. And right now I just think it's too late. So I just don't think a year from now that this will be any better than what we currently sit in right now.
Well, I thank you all for joining me today and having this discussion. It's been very informative. I also want to thank you on a personal level for providing great entertainment for all of us to watch on the weekends when you're putting in the hard work and the sweat and grinding out your bodies on the field. It's been really fun to watch your careers. So thank you, gentlemen, and we'll tune in a year and we'll see where we are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning into the Mentors and Moguls podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, rate and review this interview and share it with a friend who could benefit from today's guest. You can find bonus video episodes at mentorsandmogulspodcast.com or check out our events page and our blog at heatherrstone.com. Until next time, make it a great day.